Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here is a quote just for this episode. Some people will never like you because your spirit irritates their demons. Denzel Washington. Our guest today, good friend of the Culture Matters podcast, founder, Guardian Roofing and Siding. Robert Frehafer is back. A friend, a leader, a guardian in the truest sense. Here today, we're going to talk about all of the values of Guardian. If you've been listening along in a series of episodes, I'll challenge you to go back and listen to the G, the U, the A, the R, the D, the I, the A, the N. We've gone through all Guardian values. And today we're going to recap. Thanks for coming back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Good morning.
So before we go through, why do the values have any relevancy in the first place in your view?
Well, the simple answer that comes to mind, Jay, is because you told me that they're a very important thing to have. Even that we talk about that pretty significantly. I think I don't know which value video or which value podcast that we talked about that is, but the concept that values come before the action versus the experience where the actions come and then the values, the written values, I should say, the written word of the values mirrors the action. So the why, I truly don't even know that I knew of company values before you explained, like, yeah, we're going to break down and break down the culture, do a culture puzzle, then break it down, do a and I forget what you called it when you wrote along. You have a term for it. Do you remember what that was called?
Shadow.
I thought, okay, shadow. I thought there was a more specific branded term when you would do that, do shadowing. But so yeah, so you spent the time shadowing, and you were able to help put to word the collaboratively. You did all the heavy lifting for a done for you project, and at that point is when I really learned about what the written word of values were and how they apply to a company. I've heard of goals, mission, purpose, vision, and of course I've heard the word values, but the why are they so important? I really didn't even understand the utility of them until working with you, and you could really, and even through that, it was a process which I'm still learning through as we do these podcasts right now. It is revealing to me how important these values are as you dig in and give me an opportunity to externally process each of these, because that's really in alignment with the way that I'm wired, the way I've been created by God, is to externally process things with someone. And there's just something about it when I say it outside of myself, it can give it legs to go, or it can make it fall, crash to the ground. And not only those extremes, but so the why, I would say, was highly motivated by you, but in conjunction with that, it's taken on I have adopted through our training and working together this understanding. Now I know understanding of why. So to give some more detail to your answer, the importance of the values, the why, is because it's able to put into word a way to communicate what is the proper way to do something, to give an individual, we say in the company, a guardian, to give a guardian clarity on how they should conduct themselves in a multitude of situations. It's not just one value for one situation. And when these values are read, when I live, first and foremost, when I and the people that are within the organization live these values out, when we enact them, so it's seen by new people, clients, the world, if we're utilizing social media, and the world as we live it out in the physical realm. These values are seen, but when we put word to it, now there's a way that we can communicate with each other. We can hold each other up, hold each other accountable. We've talked about that in these episodes. How does it hold leadership accountable from subordinates? How does a leader lead their team and the people that they work with through the word of the value? I can be convicted myself by reading and seeing and knowing the value. When decisions are being made, literally you can go, like, the physical sense of it is you can walk into the conference room, see them on the wall, read them, and point at them like, oh, is my decision, is it supporting this, is this action in alignment? Because I found that I'm an emotional, I'm a complex individual, let's just say, mentally and emotionally and relationally. And so decisions become clouded, things become, and it seems as if there's always a new scenario that's presenting itself where it's this new thing to solve or figure out. And that's another utility, that's another why, the importance of these values is that they can be helpful in real time, as well as for casting vision, right? And my mind is really focused on that. At the end of the year of 2023. We just had our quarterly meeting. We're looking at 2024. There's a lot of language that's going around of goals, 2024, writing out the vision for things. And these values support, or they're in alignment with it, or they can give me an opportunity to make sure that my vision is in alignment with my core values. So there's a little, I notice that's the plan for this podcast, is to break down a joining of all these and review them. So that's my why that I say to that, answer to that.
Every customer is different and that makes them special. Serve to their needs and create win-win relationships. Unique.
I love the fact that after all this work that we've been putting in, even when you start talking, I'm like, yeah, I know that one. It's unique, right? It's like you're the teacher and I'm the guy that's the student memorizing. It's my own values, right, based off of how we've lived and what we've done. But to now again, it's just supporting of this activity that we're doing, which is now I'm knowing it, and then I'm becoming more clear on it from these external processed and discussing the
It's an
value.
interesting part that you say that. It's part, it's the idealized self in written form. Meaning, if the the most constructive parts or aspects of who you are as a person that I was able to witness and observe are represented in the word in these sentences, by these words, symbolically tied to the name of the company and what a guardian can represent. The character attributes that can cloud, like all of us have the best of ourselves and the worst of ourselves, in a sense that we're battling each and every day. So I think that's important to, like, for the listeners listening to this. There's, if they were to write down their values, like what they believe, there's also what we do that contradicts what we believe. And what we believe will be revealed in how we act and interact with other people. So there's a component of the observation that we'll observe, let's say, areas of growth. I have areas of growth. You have areas of growth. The listeners have areas of growth. And our values project out. So oftentimes or the natural path I've observed when organizations get together and do their values is they come up with this idea of the best representation of who they think everyone needs to be. And that's part of it. The piece of who we actually are in real time based on how we actually behave. That's going to lead to not undermining the values in real time, using the values against each other. Essentially, negating the value of values in the first place. So I'd like to add that is that the best of who you are it was observed in the construction of the values or the articulation of the behaviors. There's still that worst part that we always have to, all of us have to contend with. Thoughts?
Many, but one I'll pull from right from the jump is when you talk about this envision. I envision this imaginary meeting. You say that the leaders of an organization are getting together and they're writing out their values based off of their ideals, their best, their ideal self. Or
yeah, what's always said is like picture the ideal employee.
Yeah.
And then the list grows.
Even the concept of that action going on rises up some, like, it's like my stomach starts to churn a little bit. My heart, I could start to not physically feel the bumping of it, but like some level of like pressure in my chest. And then something that makes my brain get like, it sends signals of caution and like, okay, you're going into tough territory because, and I look at that as like I think there's a physical response that's going on is coupled with spiritual stuff too. Like because I can envision myself going in to write a value and exactly what you're saying, which when you say it, it comes off real easy of the tongue. Well, let me say that from this side of the screen or the discussion, I'm hearing like, oh yeah, it's really people get together and they write down what is the ideal actions and self, and nobody's jumping on the wall and writing, we're gonna lie and cheat and do this and that, right? Like, so they're writing the ideal, but but it really rises up what we've been working on for 5 years: authenticity, right? Like being transparent, being clear, being, doing the same thing, all, consistency and all these different things. So the anxiousness that would rise up, I think, is coming from the reality or some level of self-awareness, like, I'm not perfect all the time. I'm not ideal. And it's not only just me, like some self-defeating, low self-esteem in that. It's that things come up, I react or act, and then I may regret an action or look back in hindsight and realize that, oh, that decision wasn't the best one, or, I could have done something different. So I think that even the concept, because we're talking you and I, but this is also, and this I do believe that it's a benefit that both of us share, is that we can just have a conversation, you and I, and almost forget that there's somebody else going to listen to this. But truly, the purpose of this is good for us right now, but somebody may be listening to this. So I'm saying this for that listener as well. That if you think about writing your goals down, listener, and you get like, oh, angsty, anxious, whatever it is, and you stop from doing that, I just want to encourage you to push through and do it and really look at yourself. And it would be so silly for me, Jay, I'm saying this to you and for you, the listener, to hear this. It would be so silly for me to say, just power through and do it. I've had such a great experience having, and it's in alignment with so many counselors that I have and advisors, having someone to help me. It sounds contradictory, and and I still deal with that today. Like, and I battle it when I say, Jay, thank you for your help with helping me write the values, because as the leader, I don't want to feel or think, I have this like insecurity that if somebody else knows that somebody else helped me write the values, then they're not authentic. But I have to put myself back into what I would say is reality, right? Not just my own narrative in my mind, that you were only able to write the values because you spent time with me, and so much time and days driving around through big meetings with staff, like all these different things, meeting with me regularly on a regular basis to hear my inner thoughts of how I created or how I do what I do. And then eventually you put, things down on paper. So my counsel, my recommendation would be that somebody does have an observer to help put something down. Maybe other people don't need that. So I'm not saying it's the only way, but it is a way that I find has been very helpful to have that third party observer in the writing. Go ahead. I can tell you want to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I think let's be clear, they're not all your values. If the whole world were to talk about all their values simultaneously, the whole world would be revealed of the lies of the world. Like,
Even with just these 8 values, I am revealed that I'm a lie because I don't even do those perfectly.
They're unrealistic standards. The value of the values is the self-awareness that can come from us looking at ourselves and saying, oh, I'm falling short here, or what can I do here, or how can I do this? I'm making this point about that exercise because what I've observed in the facilitation and the curation of quote unquote values of organizations is it becomes about the other or the they and not the self. So it's the exercise is not, it's not who are we at our worst if a group of people get together. It's not who are we at our worst. Put all our values down at our worst. It's who should, what's the ideal employee look like? It's all a projection. It's an obfuscation of responsibility. So, and what that ends up doing now, of course it is because the consequence of the lack of awareness would be the projection of the self onto other people. So to reconcile that paradox, having someone that's professional observe all values. We're not going into the other part of the conversation, which would be the deconstructive values. That's between you, your wife, your advisors, and your maker. We're just talking about the idealistic values of the organization that people that come into it can have a roadmap to behave in more constructive ways. We're just talking about the ideal. So in the observation, there's contradictory values being observed. We're working on the less constructive ones together offline, and we're talking about the constructive ones online. The best of what was observed of you, client facing, employee facing. I think it's important to discuss that because if the exercise in a group in the next year, let's say you get together with your team and break down and rebuild them and continually do that over time with the culture. The process of breaking down and rebuilding them, depending on how open it is, and dependent upon how the values are actually lived out, it will take acting them out to rebuild those word structures, to rebuild and renew the values with the people. It will take having lived with them. So of course, the natural path that I've observed in the creation of values is facilitator coming in and helping people write down their idealized self on a board. It makes it all about the other and the they and not what's really going on. Who are we actually at our worst? Who are we most often? That doesn't happen in the collective. I would argue, though, that today and in the future, that's something that you're more than capable of doing, facilitating, and essentially leading, being a leader, because you've got on a different journey, maybe a longer, more arduous journey towards an awareness and an understanding of values, your values and values. But that's the key differentiator is these are just the constructive, idealized values that guide us in the organization. They're not all the values, because we would have to write the opposite in all of these on a board. Because there's two sets of values. There's the values that we project, and there's the values that we live. And now the theory is how do we integrate them to where the ones we're projecting we're living more than the ones we're repressing, that it's hard to admit to ourselves that we're living, the worst of ourselves. The worst of ourselves that alienates people around us, that leads to the tribalism in the culture, that leads to poor decision making, that leads to fear in the organization. The value of values is the interaction around the values, as opposed to the codification and then the dogma of values. Like, you're not living this, you're not living that. Because I see that happen a lot. How to get my peer to live the values? I have to live it. Versus how to get my peer to live the values? I have to tell them they're not living it till they're blue in the face. I'm blue in the face. It's not I don't think a simple or quick to grasp concept. And maybe if it was, it wouldn't be the alternative that I'm saying. Is how I've seen it done is people get together and they tribalistically focus on the other, right? I want to find the right people, not I need to develop into a more quality person to attract more quality people.
There's a lot there. The one thing that you said that sticks out to me is how the values are able to be like to use my terms, like I'm able to self-reflect through the values and hold myself accountable through the values and them written on the wall. And then as well, that goes for the group, and then for the individual coming in, they can then view themselves through the values as they're taught and talked about and lived out. But the way that it really landed on me heavily was, it's from a biblical standpoint. There is, there's an account in the Bible, Old Testament to New Testament, and there's a very important part, which is the part of the law in the Old Testament, the Torah, and there's like these 600 and certain amount of, I want to say 12 or 13, but I really don't know the number, 600 and something laws that were given originally, and it's talked about throughout the Bible, the law, and how, and in the New Testament where we're at now, it talks about how the law reveals the sin in us. So the written, that's where I equated that to where you're saying, all right, the values will be the self-awareness reflection, so that a grid of what we look at, how our actions and attitudes are. So it's without the written word, we don't really have that. The action does work. If I'm and it's the same theory. If I'm standing around guys that are reading philosophy books all day long, and drinking water and doing stretches and exercise and all these great things, all day long, and that's who I'm surrounded by, there's a chance that I may feel convicted if I walk into the meeting carrying a dozen donuts and I order pizza to meet me at the gym, and I'm like just standing there talking about, the news while they're doing all these other healthy things. Like there's a chance that I will have, through their action, I'll have that conviction to make a change. So surely the action around somebody, like you said, living out the Bibles or living out the values, and somebody being in
Interesting.
in closeness to it, that's going to change someone. But then when it's written as well, it just it creates this clarity. And truly, what is word right now? This is an early meeting, I tell you, and I'm a little, I didn't sleep much, but what is the word? The word is just us and how we communicate with each other. That's what creates culture, is language. There's the acted out, the spoken, the written, and then the stories. So all that, and then the symbolism. All that being said, it is surely in some capacity, some level of tribalism, cultural, however you want. Which I think the word tribalism has a negative connotation, but it is what it is. It's a form of a culture, and we will then push somebody out of the culture that's not. We'll let them go to a different culture, or we will, if somebody's open. And I love my big takeaway from this right so far today is that, yeah, like that thing that I was always uncomfortable with about when I had to look the values in the face and see them and feel like, man, I'm not even perfect. Like, how could I even talk about these? In the past was way more of that. It's like I now, and that's the benefit that I get with working with you, is that the things that are uncomfortable, that I don't even understand why they're uncomfortable, they get externalized and understood. So now I can then verbalize that same thing to the staff coming in, like, hey, I get it. These are our values. This is what it is. This is what we live through. This is what we aspire to. These are only some of them, but they'll direct. These are the high level, important ones that are going to impact the company. And so that being said, that's one of the things that come to mind with what you were just talking about. The other two things that I don't want to miss out on, and literally I'm like, man, I want to get this podcast and listen back to that time, because you also talked about, because there's a lot that's in to learn about these values. You talked about two more things in your last time that you just were speaking about, how it is complex, and the complexity of the written values, and the other side, the opposite of the value of the written word values that we have now, and what are the things that then create these things. That makes me excited. I'm like, yeah, even though that's what we do, we work through those things, right? But I'm like, man, now let's dig into that on the flip side, because that will really, probably, I'm assuming, dig in, rip the band-aid off of the uncomfortableness. Like, all right, so how does this work? What's the learning lesson? Why do we, like, you don't want to touch that fire anymore? So there's a lot that you started to talk about, that truly right around the time when you were saying, like, it's not just a simple process, and it is complicated, that I was really starting to lose you a little bit of what you were saying. So I'm interested to unearth more, because I've already found so much value in the values of the things that I wasn't even aware of. So I look forward to continuing to uncover the why and the value of values.
I think if simply how we behave will have a bigger consequence on their company than what we aspire to, what actually occurs. So the process is going to increase the likelihood of positive consequences, or it's not. So something like, so this is about how we actually behave, not just that we have values. Because if they digress into marketing or branding, then the culture isn't real. There are tribalistic aspects to people getting together. A story doesn't have to be accurate, meaning you tell the world what hey, this is what we are. We're open for business. We have the best tasting cookies. Well, then they buy the cookie, they eat it, and it tastes terrible. What happened?
Right.
So, well, potentially where's the gulf between we lied to ourselves and we lied? Meaning, yeah, because we could be so unaware and unsophisticated about the cookie making process, detached from our competition, because the taste of the cookie is going to be relative to the customer tasting everybody else's cookies. Like there's an aspect of them deciding our value. We're competing in the consequence with other people. Something
Agree.
you said earlier, though, about shame. Interesting. I want your thoughts on this. If I'm in a group of people and I feel shame based on behaviors I believe are more constructive. So I've been behaving in a way, whether I'm ready to admit it to myself or not, I've been behaving in ways that are deconstructive to me, whether I want to talk about it with others or myself or not. Just in the proximity of being around other people, as you put it, that we're leading that would lead to shame, an inwardness, a reflection, a feeling of I'm less than. However, within that, there's a possibility of renewal, redemption, growth, self-correction. Alone, though, because I don't need to tell anybody else. It's between me and myself, because I'm watching these other people live in a way that I actually want to live, even if I'm not living it. That's a very different scenario than going in a group and having someone in the group with their words tell me all the things that I'm already feeling. Put the word in front of people. Call me out in front of people. Now you have external and internal shame. See what I'm saying? Or what I'm trying to make a point here is that it's, or how about this? I'm in a group of people and I feel ashamed based on who I think I could be versus what I am doing. And someone is calling me out on the things that I'm already ashamed of, and they're not an exemplar of the things that I'm ashamed of. Meaning they're just like, they're telling me what I need to be doing, but they don't do it themselves. Now I have the shame. Uh, if I'm in a group, it's internal shame and external shame, and the where I'm getting it from is of a from an audience, or not an audience, a speaker that is not exemplifying it themselves. What emotions will that lead to?
Read the quote.
Well, the quote in the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah, some people will never like you because your spirit irritates their demons.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Here's the, and this is your language. This is not an all or nothing, but what I've been experiencing, what I've been witnessing, seeing, and what I believe that I've done in the past, like experience personally in regards to that quote and this question, is that, and it's in alignment with what you just talked about with the cookie company. The cookie company, the leader of the cookie company that said, we got the best cookie. They think they have the best cookie. They could be self-deceived to think they have the best cookie when they really may not have the best cookie. And it's in comparison to everything else around them. So even if the listener in the audience is being told something that they feel ashamed of by the leader in the front, but they can see the leader is not living up to those things. The real interesting part is that the leader may not even be aware that they're not living up to those things, and they just may be acting this out. So based off of the paradigm of the whoever it is, the leader or the audience or the employee or staff or guest to the crowd, whoever it is, the person on the other side of this podcast, right? It's all perception. And then if each individual, here's what I'm witnessing and I have experienced, is that each individual, this is like basics of psychology and sociology, I think right now, is that we're all looking at each other through our own view, our own perception. And if we have a crap shame, let me rephrase that. My experience is that I've gone through a lot of challenges in life, whether they're self-created, the environment, the world, whatever these things are, that led me to a fairly insecure personality. I'm a fairly insecure human. So I could hear somebody say something, I'm already dealing with my own shame in it. They might not even be talking to me, about me, the thing of me, and I'm like, man, like they're really hitting me. So the reason why I say read the quote is that, can you read it one more time? So, because I don't have my thing to write it down. I'm sorry. That someone
Yes,
else's.
some people will never like you because your spirit irritates their demons.
So my point with that is that the audience, the listener, when we say they're demons, I'm not saying literal demons that are inside of them. I'm not viewing it that way, but my own crap, right? The stuff that you put in the closet, the things you don't want to look at yourself, your shadow of you, your the alter ego, so to speak, like the opposite of what we talk about, the written ideals that's in there. And we don't even want to talk about that stuff, but we carry it. And then when the other person's spirit is talking about, yes, this ideal, that ideal, this is how I lived through this one scenario, and you can too, right? Like that's their ideal. They're casting that vision, they're sharing it. So through the irritation of our own stuff, many humans, including myself, first reaction is to blame. Well, let me discredit that person. And I don't, this is where like I'm like a student of this right now. I'm watching it go on because I do it, and the reaction back again from the other counterpart is that then they, once they're feeling or seeing that other person do that other person's spirit, now on the flip side, their essence, their being, their word, their actions, their unspoken things based off of how they're feeling, right? They're feeling judged or irritated. They're demons. They will act or speak or do something back to the counterpart. And then the counterpart, next thing you know, they're recycling the same thing back till the next thing you know, we're all like avoiding conflict, not saying what we really think in an effort to try to get a point across based off of how our spirits or how our demons have been agitated. It is chaos. And that is where I feel that we're landing, right? Like, I mean, that's where I'm experiencing me and others in this world are navigating on a regular basis. Now, I do say like, all right, maybe it's just me and the people that I get the chance to experience, or I'm also open to the fact that maybe it's just me and the way that I view the world based off of my own.
Well, that's
experience.
actually an interesting thought. Put it this way. If we don't know what to talk about outside of each other, then we're just going to talk about each other. You did this, you missed this, why was this? The more scaffolding we build, understand it's where the strategy and the understanding the business and business in all as a whole, and the products and the services and the market and they're like spending time building that scaffolding helps elevate the people from the regression of just warfare without thought. That's a component to it. When we don't know what to talk about outside of just the people, all we talk about is the people. Now, that doesn't mean that if we know a lot to talk about, our sophistication goes up in business. We do have the plans, we do have the aims, we do have the strategy, we do have that. Doesn't wipe the slate clean of emotion or taking things personally. That's going to be a constant, but there is a relationship between that and knowing what to do or believing one knows what to do and how to do it. There is a relationship to it. There's also a tension, because when do we think and when do we do? You have to do both. When's the time to mastermind and when's the time to get in the trenches and get our hands dirty? And it's an imperfect answer, but there's lots of answers. And it's going to take communication with those outside of the organization that are serving the organization, those within the organization, from top, middle, down, to get clear on what those answers are. But that's something to throw in the pot. Is there's the less we know outside of just the people, the more we're going to talk about the people and not the things and the stuff. Inherently, that's where learning comes in. That's where advisory comes in. That's where education comes in. But there's a tension between education and work. There's a tension between entrepreneurship and education. There's a tension between starting something new and knowing everything before. There's constant tension. And if going back, if we if knowing or perceiving to know and having plans and desires and aims was enough, well then, the people that are the most educated in the world, this would be a utopian world. It's not. So it's not just that, it's not losing sight of the values, how to live with other people, cooperate with other people, contrary to how they treat us. I guess that's right. It's proportional. Like that's where I come. I'm stuck at this. Not stuck, but this is where I'm at. Love has to be proportionally greater to hate in action, to renew the bonds, or to renew to continue the feedback loop, or the conversation's over. Love has to. So that tension, you're saying, if both parties are agitating each other's demons, somebody has to break the domino effect, or somebody has to break that chain. Love has to be proportional to hate, and then plus one. If I'm getting negative 100, then I have to give 101, so it's plus one. If I'm getting negative 500, I have to give negative 501, so it's plus one. It's a plus. If you give me the worst of you, and you give me a negative 100, and then I give you a negative 100, we have a negative 200. You had negative 100. Now you have negative 200. I might have been up 50, and now I'm negative 150. I mean, it's just like an algebraic way to look at it. But we're both negative now. But the question is, well, I like to. I'm still trying to think through this, like work it out. But it is. I think of it like I go through my life. Imagine everybody listening to this had a positive or negative number representing their consciousness, that had a relationship with how they behaved with everyone they've ever interacted with. Some people are up 7 million positive. Some people are negative 18 million. Some people are up 7. Every interaction I go into with every person I ever interact with, my energy's up or down. And it's not solely dependent upon how they relate to me. It's how I relate back to them relating to me. So if I'm up, I'm at 1 million, and you give me negative 10,000. I only get to stay at 1 million or go greater than 1 million, proportional to how I take the negative 10,000 and bring it to positive 1 or positive 10,000. So that's forgiveness in my, like, where there's a forgiving the actuality of forgiveness is some type of relational feedback loop of compassion and empathy and rationality and love is a byproduct of that. So I'm leaving now. The more think of it like right, algebraically. The more I'm able to, and I don't even think maybe if it was looking algebraically, like if somebody gives you negative 10,000 and you had a million, and you exercise that negative 10,000 to be positive 10,000, you really go up positive 20,000. So you're at 1,020,000 because it compounds. I'm not saying this is like science or something. It's just a way to think about it. And so now you're going to your next interaction with 1,020,000. However, what if you come across somebody with negative 7 million and they give you negative 6 million? How are you going to withstand the pressure if you're only 1,020,000 type of person? You're not, without something.
Literally, the word that comes to my mind is the Holy Spirit of God. Like
okay,
that's when you were like, how are you going to come up with it? Was like already there, and then you're like,
well, that's a pretty good answer. I mean, so because there's this leap, right? There'd be a leap because so I go throughout my life thinking, oh, well, I wasn't able to handle that conflict with that person because I wasn't strong enough. It happens. It's happened this year. Where my 1,020,000 lost to 7 million, what have you. Keep in mind, there's an inherent fallacy in that because I'm projecting out to the world. So if I'm saying they're negative 7 million and they're saying I'm negative 7 million and they're positive 1,020,000, they think I'm negative 7 million and they're positive 1,020,000. I think I'm positive 1,020,000. They're negative 7 million. That's why I believe in apologizing. Like if I lose that opportunity to love proportional to my perception of hate, then why? I mean, the game isn't actually over until the game is over. Because I'm living and breathing. The game is not over until the game is over. So I can continue to play that game within this game at any time. And if I'm incapable of playing that game within this game as in life, that game is the interaction within the game of the relationship, right? So there's life, there's the relationship, there's the conflict within that relationship, within this life. If I'm unable to go and play another game within that game of a relationship, within this game of life, then I'm clearly not living the values.
I'm laughing. I know you see me laughing a little bit because I was listening. I was tracking with you.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about like if we take a clip of this video here, go from when you're saying like 1 to 1,000 to 1,000,000 to 1,000,000 negative positive, and that the game in your hands spinning the game within the game of life, within the game of the relationship, and if I'm in the game,
doesn't make any sense.
I was thinking the game could be like a little meme.
Yeah.
Quick little meme video.
Yeah, I think for the sake of the listener, we may have to stop.
Wait.
What in closing, can you tie a bow on this?
Yeah, I didn't want to jump away from there. So these are deep psychological, philosophical things that, to put it in simplistic terms, because I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. Because you did start talking about, like an algebraic, way to describe it sounded like in agreements with what I was saying about how each individual is reacting to the other individual based on their own paradigm and their own experience. And we have this opportunity to grow through love, through being open and talking with each other and really embracing that and you grow exponentially is what it sounded like you were saying when you love through. So the the harder it is to love someone based off of the way that we're viewing their actions, the more we grow in a positive. You use an algebraic a
Well, both
number.
viewing their actions and their actions. There's viewing them and
Yeah,
there's what they actually do. So if somebody
yeah,
actually physically punches you in the face is an actual transgression.
yeah.
You perceiving someone doesn't like you because they said something that they may or may not have intended to hurt your feelings is a
That would be the
different type of
viewing of.
transaction.
Yeah.
And both need to be unpacked. One literally needs to be forgiven, and the other may or may not need to be forgiven. That's what.
So I say that because I say like the simple breakdown a little bit of this because we do expound on small items, but a takeaway that you talked about throughout that last discussion part was that if we don't have anything else to talk about, no other, you use the word scaffolding to talk about, we're going to talk about each other. And that is and I have, and then you talked about there's no clear exact thing like when should you do a mastermind and when should you be in the trenches and what thing. And you'll know this because in 2020 or 2019 there was so much time on Guardian spent in building infrastructure support. That was like mastermind and building, but not so much in the trenches. Then boom, COVID hits and everything shuts down. Like it's like chaos, and then it's like more back into the trenches. And to have that balance, what that looks like is very important in the acting out of these values, because you could end up just like you say, if there's nothing else to talk about, you talk about the people. Well, these values can be used in that scenario. If and it really triggered me, and so I wanted to share that for the benefit of the audience as well as the leader. To It's a reminder for me to continue on what I do, and for me, I need to do more of it, more intentional, and more um I just have to make sure that I'm doing it more and live it out better. But it definitely hit me more for training the staff of the company, having regular meetings, going through the scaffolding of the business, training on the shingles, training on this, training on the install, training on the CRM, training on these things through the medium of group meetings. And if not, then pretty much you're right. We're going to land on coming back together and talking about each other. And that is a good thing in some capacity, but it needs balance. It has to have, and I would say weighed out with heavier balance on the day-to-day. This building of the scaffolding of the company will create that. And then when the focus actually becomes that, because it's what we're doing anyway, but if it becomes the how do we knock the doors? How does this roof get installed? How do you explain the system to the client of a roofing system? When they're focused on those things, everybody in the organization, now we have purpose, other things to talk about than, oh, this guy did this or that or whatever else, however it goes. So that was very impactful for me. Thanks for touching on that. And then in the wrap up, to talk about the wrap up, today's meeting was the wrap up of all the past Guardian goals. And I'm sorry, Guardian values. I've been in the goals mindset. But that
Yeah,
being
can you
said,
read through?
well, I can. I didn't want to just take the whole meeting hostage and read through for no reason. I really think that it would make sense to say at this point, go back and listen to them. For the listener, go back
Good
and
idea.
listen to them. There, it's Guardian, Guardian, right? There is a bit, and very interesting. It's not the exact definition that you would think that is used. There's unique definitions for each one of the words that have been created based off of action, and Jay, with your help to build out, and then we collaborated on how to get it, clear, that a language that I was comfortable with. And there, if you found this interesting at all as a listener, to please, I encourage you, go back and listen to the in depth. And today we got on some little tangents. I do think that has to do with it's early in the morning. You were super excited in the morning. I was all the way drained, didn't fall asleep till like after 1 o'clock or something for some reason, which is way out of normal. And but there's a lot of useful info. I'm going to go back and listen to it, right? I'm going to then share them with my staff team, social media. I'm going to build it into how we regularly communicate, as well as regularly share the podcast out for like continual education and training of what we do. And my hope is that we will continue this on. You mentioned doing like an altar of each, like the opposite of each side, which you've mentioned it in the past, as well as in this meeting of how that would go. So there's going to be more and more, and there's opportunities to listen, through these. So yeah, I just wanted to round that up because I don't think it would make sense to just read through them just to read through it. I'm more than willing. It'll take 2 minutes. So you tell me, Jay, if you'd like me to
No,
read.
that's good. The inverted guardian values we'll talk about. And one last thought there is that the values can absolutely be continually rebuilt with the people. And this is why. This is not Moses going in a bush burning in the Ten Commandments. This is man-made, meaning for all companies. So if a leader wants to get together with their people and ask them what they think of the values, and there's no rules in that way. The idea is that we have conversation. We're capable of having conversation. We're capable of communicating what the problems are of the organization. Who we believe is not in the flock, and we can make those tough decisions together. Ultimately, that's most important. So even as someone that has pride in their work, the work is the process. The work is not the fruit. Just because we at this point have fruit, meaning values that we've spent time talking about and utilizing in the organization. The real fruit or the value is that in this case, Robert, as founder, CEO, can conceptualize and idealize and integrate with your leadership, your people. Moving forward, who are we? Why do we exist? What do we stand for? Who do we not want to be? Where are we going? How can we get there? Let's get to work. Like that's the value of values. And that is a process that it'll go as far as it'll go as far as the people want it to go. We'll see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.
Thanks, Jay.